Hello and welcome to today's video. This is going to be my worst books, my most disappointing books, and the books that I DNF'd in 2023. I have collated them all together because honestly there's not that many. Like, I really did have to look into them. I've got 4 that are worst, 4 that are most disappointing, and 9 books that I DNF'd during 2023. Obviously the ones that I DNF'd, I don't have that much to say. I'll tell you why I DNF'd them, but like I can't actually tell you whether the book was like good or bad because in the end I DNF'd it, I didn't finish it, I don't know. But the worst and the most disappointing, I can tell you why I really didn't like them. So yeah, I guess we should do the DNFs first because I have the least to say about those, and some of them might be good books, they might just not be for me. So in terms of the DNF, the first book that I DNF'd in 2023 was Earthlings. This was a very odd book. This, I really don't know how to explain it. It looks cute from the cover. I felt like I was going to be getting a weird story because I have read Convenience Store Woman by the same author and there were weird parts in there. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend going into Earthlings without looking at the like triggers. There's no triggers in the book, there's no triggers at the front, nothing I can see anywhere, no content warnings, nothing. I don't think I made it even 20% of the way in, and I mean, I understand that the things that we are seeing on page were probably due to where the story was going in the future, but there was no warning. It was very like out of nowhere and it was extremely detailed and graphic, and I don't know, like personally I didn't want to read about it and never come across a book that has been like this before without there being very explicit content warnings of what to expect. And yeah, I DNF'd it. I was like, this isn't worth it for me. Then I also DNF'd The Amber Spyglass. This is the 3rd book in the Northern Lights trilogy, the Golden Compass trilogy, whatever it's called, by Philip Pullman. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't really enjoyed any of them. Like, book 1 was just very easy to read because I was so familiar with the story and it was just very reminiscent of growing up. Book 2 I found more difficult, but I pushed through, and book 3 was like double the size of the first 2 and I was trying to push through and I just realised, why am I trying to push through this? I'm not enjoying it. Like, I'm not going to give this more than honestly 2 stars probably the way it was going. I did get quite a way into this. I think I was a 3rd in and I was just like, I haven't enjoyed the writing style or like the characters from the first 2 books. Why am I making myself do this? So yeah, I DNF'd it. It wasn't worth it for me. Then I DNF'd Bimbo and Topsy. This is a little children's book and it's a book that I still own from when I was younger. I can remember reading this when I was a child and really enjoying it, and I tried to reread it. It didn't hold up, it was bad, and there were things in there, especially because so much of it revolves around a cat and a dog. There were things in there that these children were being allowed to do to these animals, and these animals were like not cared after basically. They were eating chocolate and stuff like that, and it's like these things would like actually kill it. Like, this isn't a good book, this isn't a good children's book. I'm gonna just let the memory of me reading it as a child live in my brain, and I'm not gonna try and like reminisce or replace that in any way. I'm just gonna DNF it and leave it be. So that's why I DNF'd that one. Then I DNF'd The Maid. Honestly, I just really wasn't enjoying this. I've heard that a lot of people like it and like the characters and like the friendships and stuff. Like, I've heard a lot of people talk and review this book and say it's good, so I definitely feel like some people do enjoy it, but for me, I was quite a chunk in. I was listening through the audio and I was also following along some bits in the book. Obviously I only got a little chunk in, so I don't know if this is accurate or not, but for me it just felt like so many people were taking advantage of our main character and no one was actually there for her, and I don't want to read about that. Like, it was just sad. Like, I think it's meant to be like kind of a bit of a fun murder mystery and it was only sad, so it wasn't for me. I wasn't finding any of it fun and I was just finding the whole situation very sad, and the fact that no one was there for our main character very sad. Then I ended up DNFing Wires and Nerves. This is a spin-off from the Lunar Chronicles. The Lunar Chronicles is a YA sci-fi fantasy, kind of a mix of the two, series that I read and I really enjoyed, and there's a spin-off called Wires and Nerves that follows one of the characters that we know from the Lunar Chronicles, and it's a graphic novel spin-off, and I started reading it. I didn't get past the like catch up of what had already happened in the Lunar Chronicles series that we're seeing, but I just really, honestly, like, this is really bad and I do feel a bit bad, but I just didn't like the art style enough that it was off-putting to me, and the fact that I can't remember how many pages I was in, but it was a chunk. I was like 10 to 20 pages in. It was only like a tiny little graphic novel and we're still getting a recap of the previous series. I was just like, I don't think this is going to be good, I don't think it's going to be for me, and it didn't give me the same feelings that absolutely any other graphic novel that I've read has. Like, as you can see, like, this is a graphic novel shelf, this down here is a graphic novel shelf, and I love them, but this one just didn't give me that, so I DNF'd it. I was like, this isn't worth me doing, especially as I love the Lunar Chronicles so much. I didn't want to taint the memory of that. Then I DNF'd On the Road. This is a classic. It's a classic I thought I was really going to love. I even brought myself a lovely little special edition of it. I have since on holiday, I sold it on. But yeah, I really tried with this one. I really tried. It was about our main character who was like 20 somethings travelling around. It was a lot to do with travelling, a lot to do with seeing places, and to be honest, there was a lot of things I didn't like. One, it was slow, it was boring. I didn't like any of our characters, even the like ways they were being introduced. I just wasn't a fan. But then I feel like the reason I thought I was going to love it so much was the travelling aspect, and the way that our main character viewed travelling and did travelling was so different to how I personally like associate with it, and how I personally like see travelling and want to be travelling. It was really off-putting. And yeah, it was nothing major in this book that made me DNF it, but it was lots and lots of little things that I was just like, I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't reading it. Picking it up felt like a task, and reading's meant to be fun. Like, you know, I read a lot and I want it to always be fun, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what videos I'm making, no matter what I'm doing reading for. It is primarily, and I want it to always stay primarily, a hobby for me. And yeah, On the Road was not fun. I was not enjoying it and I wasn't having a good time, so I got rid of it. Then an unfortunate one, I ended up DNFing Skullduggery Pleasant, Playing with Fire. This is the second book in the Skullduggery Pleasant series. Book one is, I believe, just called Skullduggery Pleasant, and I've really enjoyed it. I've reread it. As a child I'd read books 1 and 2, love them, and I never continued on with the series, so I thought, you know what, let's continue on. Read book 1, thought it was really good still, and I read book 2 and I didn't like it. I didn't like our characters. And the thing is, I don't think this is a bad book. I think if I would have continued on with the series when I started reading it when I was younger, I would have loved it and I would have continued on. But I feel like it is, you know, you read some books and they're aimed at like, you know, like younger YA audience or whatever, but even though they're aimed at that age, they kind of like transcend that, and like anyone of any age can read. For me personally, I didn't feel like I was going to enjoy it, and I felt like if I did continue on reading, there might be parts of it that were fun, but overall it wasn't going to get more than a 3 stars, and I wasn't going to read like it's like a 17 book series or something. I just wasn't going to continue on that long with how much I wasn't enjoying book 2, and just how silly, but not in like a fun silly way, I found it. And like, again, these are very personal. I feel like some people would love that, but yeah, it was unfortunate because I was really looking forward to like reading that whole series and it wasn't meant to be. Then I DNF'd Angelful. So this is like a YA series. I don't really remember it. I don't remember starting it that well, but I do remember reading a few chapters and just not getting along with it at all. Finding it very odd pacing, I think it's the only thing I can remember. I assume there was something bigger than that that made me DNF it, but I truly don't remember it. Yeah, I truly don't remember why I DNF'd this one. I can remember it was odd pacing. I can remember I got a few chapters in. Yeah. And then the final book that I DNF'd, which is the last book that I DNF'd of the year, and actually DNF'd it on New Year's Eve, was a book called Witch. This is a poetry collection, and to be perfectly honest, I feel like it's probably great. Probably loads of people love this one, but it was going right over my head. I'm still fairly new to poetry and I feel like I know what I like, and this one was a bit outside my comfort, and I really enjoyed the introduction and I really enjoyed the titles of the poems, but the poems themselves were just going over my head. I wasn't understanding them, and like I was getting the vibe and I was enjoying the vibe, but it was taking me so much. I was only reading like 1 or 2 poems at a time and putting it down for days, and that's never happened to me with a poetry collection before, and it didn't feel fun because of that. So I decided to just DNF it. I didn't want to carry over any books that I didn't have to into the new year, and I kind of told myself I can sit down and read this now. Like, I had the time, I can sit down and read this now and read it all, or I'm not going to read it. And I realised I actually didn't care that much, so yeah, I DNF'd it. I was like over halfway through, I think, but it had taken me honestly months to get that far. So yeah, not mad that I got rid of it, but I don't know, maybe one day, 10 years time, I'll like know poetry like this, that, and I'll be able to revisit ones that were confusing at this point. But yeah, too confusing for me right now. So those were all of the books that I DNF'd. Let's do the worst books. Let's do the worst, because I feel like these are the ones that like were actually bad, and I feel like a lot of those DNFs, it was very much personal, but the worst books I think were actually bad. So Death of a Naturalist, not a fan, not a fan, not a fan. Yeah, I didn't like how this was wrote. I didn't like a lot of the descriptions, and I just found a lot of it really like icky and off-putting, and I don't think I would get along with the author at all. I I really didn't like the way that nature was described. I didn't like the way that we were seeing the world. I really didn't like it. I gave it 1 star and it was incredibly bad. In my opinion. Obviously these are all my opinion. If someone read these books and loves them, that's great for you. Personally, I did not. Then I read The Crucible, which I thought was going to be so good. Like, I was so excited to read this and I ended up giving it 1.5 stars. It really wasn't it for me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. And I just found it boring. Honestly, like, it was boring. I ended up reading it physically along with the audiobook and it made it a bit better because it was like performed a little bit in the audiobook, but I was still so bored and I was like, this is meant to be like, you know, not fun, but like a dramatic event. It's meant to be this big thing. It was dramatic. It was a very big event and it was written in such a boring way. I just didn't care. So yeah. Then I read Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast and I gave it 1 star. And let's be real here, I know some people like this. I don't want to bash on it because obviously it's just a little collection of things, but to me it felt like someone had like, if you are the sort of person, this is the best way I can describe it, and like I know these people are out there, there are people who would enjoy this book, there are, like, it's got a decent rating on Goodreads. If you would Google like quotes about whatever, and you would sit through and read like multiple Google image result pages of quotes about this thing, then maybe you'd like this book. But that's literally what it felt like. It felt like if, do you know, it felt like if the author, like obviously the author, Twitter wasn't a thing when the author was around, but it felt like the author was just tweeting these things out and someone had collected together these tweets. Obviously that's not what it was, but that's what it felt like and I did not enjoy that. I've seen other reviews where people have given it high ratings, like 3 stars, 4 stars, and wrote that out as a positive. So I do think this is one that, like, maybe if people like a different type of writing, like a different type of thing, they would enjoy, but no, for me it did not work at all. And it's also very hypocritical. I remember there was a few points where I put tabs and I was like, well, you just said this here and a few pages back you said this here, and those like don't go together. So yeah. And then the last of my worst books of 2023 was a book called Psycho Beast, and this is the 3rd in the series, and being perfectly honest, books 1 and 2 I think I gave 1.5, 2 stars. Like, they didn't get good ratings. Book 3 I gave a 0 star rating. I just couldn't do it. I don't ever want to be like, oh, like this book had this issue in it, and maybe it wasn't purposeful, maybe the author just needed to do more research, but it felt very transphobic to me. And because it's a fantasy book, books 1 and 2, it gave me an icky feeling. I was like, oh, like, I don't feel great about this. But it was very much like, no one else on the Goodreads had said anything about it, and I was just like, maybe I'm just reading too much into this. Like, it just gave me a bit of an icky feeling. But it was like just one character, how they were being described, how they were being portrayed, and then like we found out they had like a power kind of related to what was being said, sort of thing. And then the way that that character was handled in book 3, I was just like, yeah, no, like, I don't like saying bad things about people. Like, about a book, fine, like if it was shit, it was shit, but when it comes to a person, I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to say anything that's potentially like bad or incorrect, but I would say if the author isn't wanting to portray trans people and the trans experience badly, then they need to do a lot more research and get some sensitivity readers and maybe talk to people who have actually gone through that experience. Because I think the way that they portrayed a certain character in a light, I don't even have words, honestly. I don't have words, but it was the worst book I've read, and I wish I had DNF'd after book 1. I wish I'd have just stopped after book 1, but I didn't. I kept going, and I really wish I hadn't, to be honest. I don't think I'll ever talk about these books again. I don't think I'll ever talk about this series again. Like, I've tried to avoid talking about it as much as possible already, but there was no way that I couldn't include it on my worst books. So let's just jump right into our most disappointing books. Honestly, these are 4 books. None of them were bad, but they were all books that I thought I was going to absolutely love, and they just ended up being a bit mediocre. None of these books are bad. I still feel like a lot of people would enjoy these books. A lot of people potentially have these books as favourite books. So none of them are bad. They're just all worse than I was expecting. And I was expecting amazing things. So the first book is The Luminaries. This is a YA fantasy. Honestly, I don't remember much about it. I read this near the start of the year, but I got rid of my copy. I gave it 3 stars. It was just very disappointing. Unfortunately, I feel like this is potentially due to the age category of YA being so broad. This felt like if you were 12, 13, 14, you could really enjoy it. If you were first getting into fantasy, if this is your first fantasy book, you could really enjoy it. And I would actually recommend it, like, if you are someone who is like 12, 13, 14 and you want to try fantasy, but maybe you're a bit intimidated by it, you're not sure if you'll understand the world building, you're not sure how you'll understand how the characters are interacting or the different types of characters, this could be a great book for that. I feel like everything was so explained, everything was so like on page, like there was no guessing, you didn't need to worry. But as someone who has read fantasy for years and years and years, and you know, like, it's my main genre, it's mainly what I read, this was just so boring. Absolutely everything could be seen, I mean, almost basically from the start. I can remember doing predictions for this and all my predictions came through, even the ones that I made at the start for the end. And it just really didn't work. The way it was being marketed very much felt like anyone of any age, like any of the YA range, could enjoy it. And although I'm not in that YA age anymore, I read a lot of the YA that is like probably a bit more older, like, you know, the Wayward Children series, absolutely love. The Lunar Chronicles series, absolutely love. Throne of Glass, absolutely love. Like, there's so many that are great, and like, yeah, I don't know, this one was just disappointing. I think it needs to be marketed better, because I don't think it's necessarily a bad book, but I don't think it was marketed the best. And I went into it expecting it to be a 5-star, super fun YA fantasy that did a load of new cool things, and it just did a lot of things that have already been done before and over explained them to a point where it's no longer enjoyable for me. But yeah, that's that one. And then I also read Dreams from My Father. This is Barack Obama's first book, I believe, that he ever wrote. I don't think it's considered his main memoir now. There is another one that he wrote after his presidency, and I do believe that that's like his main memoir, but this one is just things connected to his father. And to be honest, I only picked up these books because of how amazing Michelle Obama's book was. I read that last year, if not the year before, and that was great. So I picked this up thinking it would be just as great, and it just wasn't. Like, I gave it 2.5 stars. It was fine, it was mediocre, but it felt like a show and tell without any analysing, and especially analysing things that aren't okay and weren't great and, you know, shouldn't have been done. I don't know, I don't remember it that well. I've kind of blocked out a lot of these books that I didn't enjoy because, like, there's no point thinking about them further. But yeah, I just remember it being really disappointing. Another one that was unfortunately really disappointing was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, and this was actually a book club book, so you can see a whole discussion up here. Again, one that I thought was going to be 5 stars, amazing, and I gave it 2.5 stars. I mean, one, it's marketed as young adult. I think it should be marketed as middle grade, and it's marketed, I don't know, in a way that made me feel like I was getting into this really fun adventure, and it was actually probably more cozy and more of a cozy, I don't know. It was a very difficult one because, again, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I just really didn't enjoy it, and I really expected it to be 5 stars. Like, it was middle of the road. I don't have a lot to say about it. It was middle of the road. It was fine. I wasn't looking for a fighting book. Like, honestly, I'd love to only ever read books that are like 4 or 5-star books, but yeah, unfortunately this one wasn't. And then the final book that I read that I was disappointed in was Before Your Memory Fades, which I gave 3 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Before Your Coffee Gets Cold series, and books 1 and 2 were amazing. They were so magical. They had such this warm, cozy feeling. There was all of these people, there were all of these characters, you felt like you really knew them, and they all interacted in such a way, and honestly, like, the whole concept, the whole thing, it was just so magical, and it really did feel like you were there. And then this 3rd one just didn't do that. It took us to a different place, which expanded the magic of the world to another place and made it feel less magical because it wasn't just this random one-off event. And there were some characters we already knew, but a lot of them were new. And the best I can describe this is, it was a fine book, the stories were fine, but the the magic wasn't there. And I also found this one to be extremely preachy, like really preachy, and I didn't agree with a lot of the messages that were being preached either. And I don't remember that in books 1 and 2 at all. It has been a couple of years since I read them, but I really don't remember that being the case. I am worried to reread them in case they were that preachy and I didn't pick up on it at the time. But yeah, this one was just, it was 3 stars. That's not a bad rating. That's middle of the road. But I expected it to be 4 or 5 stars like the previous 2. And it wasn't. I expected it to feel magical like the previous 2. And it didn't. So yeah, those were my 4 most disappointing. And that's all the books. I've spoken to you about the ones I DNF'd, the worst ones and the most disappointing. And that is kind of like the worst of my reading of 2023. There are also good books that I read. I will link my best books video up above. There were some amazing books. I found some new all-time favourites. Like, I'm so happy with a lot of the books that I've read. But unfortunately, there were four handfuls full. Yeah, four handfuls of books that did not make the cut. And just honestly wish I'd never read. So yeah, there's that. I do really hope that you enjoyed the video. Please do give it a like if you liked it. Subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this. You can always let me know in the comments what your worst book of the year was, or a book that you really didn't like, or if there's any of the books that I mentioned today that I didn't like and you did like them, like comment that down below. Like, people should be able to hear all of it. And yeah, just because I don't like a book doesn't mean that other people won't, but I feel like it's a different taste in reading if that is the case. So yeah, it's always cool to see. So yeah, that is it from me today. I really do hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.